Hey everyone, welcome to the 7th race of the Ironman Pro Series, Ironman 70.3 Aix-en-Provence. I can't believe we're already down that many races in the season. It is one race after the other right now, and this one had a $50,000 prize purse, as well as 3 slots for both the men and the women to the upcoming 70.3 World Championship in Marbella. We had 2 good start lists again, and of course on the men's side, it was the Norwegians making the headlines again. Could they finally find themselves on a podium together again, like they had done only once previously before in the short course world? We'd have to wait and see, but Christian Blumenfeld was for sure the favorite coming into this one after his Ironman Texas performance. But would that still be in his legs? His training didn't seem to show that it was. We had a couple other big names in here, the likes of Pierre Lecour, who was coming off of an insane run a couple weeks ago at Ironman Venice Solo, and so many other guys, including some other Pro Series contenders like Leon Chevalier. So starting off with the swim, this would be a good one to see how this European field compared to this North American St. George field we saw last week. And right away, we could tell that there was a much bigger front pack here than there was there, and a lot of top swimmers causing the speed to be rapid here. The likes of Sam Dickinson, Mattia Ceccarelli at first pushing the pace, and then eventually Jonas Schomburg coming to the fore, and you can really tell his stroke, his big, long, loping style that he has. But their speed wasn't enough to break the pack apart. Ended up being about 22 guys coming into transition altogether. Kasper Storns was the fastest Norwegian in the swim. Christian was quite a bit back in this pack, but still within touching distance, unlike his compatriot Gustav Iden, who actually swam faster than he did at Oceanside 70.3. But when it is a big pack like this, sometimes you can miss it just because it's so chaotic at the start, as Kasper Storns said afterwards.
It's a very chaotic swim, and I managed to get to the front by the way back.
And it looks like that might have cost Gustav not being able to find his way into the right spot to get in this front pack. Sam Dickinson and Jonas were the quickest out of transition. They were out like a bullet. Pierre Lecour was right there on their heels, but then had to turn around quickly, obviously forgetting something and then having to run back and get started a little bit later in the pack. His bike was the big question for this race. It was what cost him the opportunity to fight for the win in Venice, so we'd have to see how well he went here. Right off the bat, it was Sam Dickinson pushing the pace, Jonas Schomburg right behind him. British Olympian has a strong set of bike legs. We know that after he helped pace Alex Yee at the Olympics in Paris. Alex Yee has said he is keeping an eye out on him in the middle distance and expects him to do extremely well. He's had some good results so far, so I was excited to see how he went. However, it would take a monumental effort to get rid of the giant pack that was forming behind him. Only Ruben Zipunka, former champion, was able to do that. He raced on the World Tour as a pro cyclist for about 3 years, so makes sense why he was able to get away. Also knows this course very well. But for the rest of them, including the likes of Christian Blumenfeld, it proved too much to break this group apart. And right away, you could see some of those effects of the pack dynamics and the race ranger being involved with athletes like Cameron Main here, touching on his brakes in the pack to make sure he stays in the right zone. Crazy scenes. At one point, though, it did look like a group of 4 or 5 had managed to split apart, including Kasper Storns, Christian Blumenfeld, Jonas Schomburg. But after the roads flattened out a little bit again, they all came back together. It was interesting to get so much time on Ruben at the front of this race, see how his position varies to a lot of the other athletes. Like Jonas Schomburg, he's a very upright position. His head isn't quite tucked all the way in below his back like we see a lot of athletes these days, compared to Kasper Storns, for example, and it's relatively similar to the likes of Sam Laidlow as well. But Ruben was really the only one enjoying some clean air. Also, a fair bit of help, you'd have to say, by some of the motorcycles. Not his choice, but there was quite a few on screen all day that were riding next to him or in front of him. I'm never a fan of that so much, but that wasn't bothering me near as much as the motorbikes with this large group. There was oftentimes as I was watching this that I felt quite unsafe, as we see, some of these motorbikes riding on the other side of the road when the roads weren't closed. And then they would duck back in with these 2 lanes of athletes trying to pass each other. It definitely didn't feel like that was meant to be happening. And you even see here this one car having to pull off into the ditch to let the motorbikes go through. That should never be happening, in my opinion. Also, with all these motorbikes involved, it does give a significant advantage to this group. The guys behind, the likes of Gustav Iden, Leon Chevalier, who missed that front swim pack, they don't have this advantage of those motorbikes helping move the wind, helping that pace at the front of the race. And because of that, Gustav Iden, Leon would never come close to seeing the front of this race. But even though Ruben might have been getting some help with the motorbikes, he probably wished he wasn't with this one at all, as they had a pretty close call here with the motorcycle ducking in right next to him while this other car was in front of him and another car coming the other way. You'll see Ruben here get pretty upset about the situation and point to the motorcycle he's at. You'd have to imagine he's asking them to stay right there or behind them, because they took behind him shortly after this. And as somebody who's been on these motorcycles before, I do feel bad for the guy on the back of the motorcycle just getting the media. He has really no control over the person driving the motorcycle. So yeah, just a thing I had to point out from this race that I saw quite a bit of. But yeah, Ruben was crushing the bike leg. He ended up breaking his own course record that he set the year before. But the other guys came off the bike about 2 minutes down. Kasper Stornes lost some time from this group, coming right into transition behind the likes of Blumenfeld and Dickinson. And then he lost even more time transitioning, another 17 seconds. So keep that in mind. He came out of transition about 30 seconds further back than Christian. But speaking of, Christian was out like a bullet and was immediately on to Simon Vian's feet and would stay there for pretty much the remainder of the run, enjoying him, pacing him. Simon was having a heck of a day and was enjoying the support of the crowd, so Christian just tagged in behind. But it did make you think, and the way the commentators were talking, was that Ironman Texas in Christian's legs? We would soon find out it was not at all. As Simon and Christian quickly caught up to Ruben, they were then joined by Jonas Schomburg impressively for a little bit, although it didn't last too long. Jonas is infamous in short course for taking out runs too fast. He was going at about a 1:04 pace for the first few kilometers.
But then I felt that he was breathing quite heavily. So then when Simon was pushing up the pace in the uphill again, he got dropped.
But somebody else was doing that as well, and that was Pierre Lecour. Sadly, he ended up losing a couple more minutes on the bike to Christian, so he was 2 minutes further back. But by halfway on the run, he'd caught up a minute to Christian. Would he be able to run another minute into him at the second half of the run? Well, that was definitely not going to be the case, because Christian, turns out, was holding a lot back, because he just turned on the jets, dropped Simon Vian like he was never there, and as well his compatriot Kasper Stornes, who paced his run impressively to catch up to them just before the final surge from Christian. And that was that. Christian set an unattainable pace, and Pierre Lecour only ended up going backwards from there as he really faded towards the end of the run. Even though he eventually passed Dickinson, Dickinson eventually took him back at the end of the run, so he came in 5th. But yeah, Christian Blumenfeld with a 1:07.12 split, but Kasper Stornes finishing shortly behind him, just over 30 seconds back. Remember how much time he lost in transition? It might have been a really close finish between them, but I still think Christian had about another minute quicker to run on this, which is just scary to think that guys are now running 1:07, 1:08 like it's nothing. That's the new standard these days. And Lionel, we've heard, has been saying that. And yeah, I'm sure we will see times like we saw Jan Frodeno set back in 2018 at the 70.3 World Champs in South Africa, where he went 1:06.30 there. So I'm sure that is in Christian's legs right now. My one hot question then for you is, how do you think Christian would do at the T100 series right now? Do you think he's the best over the middle distance, or the best athlete long course right now? Would he take on Hayden Wilde, Martin Van Riel? Would he beat them? Let me know in the comments what you think. But coming up next for Christian, you might have thought was Ironman Frankfurt, the next race on the Pro Series for him, Gustav, and Casper, but it's actually a short course race. He's going back to race WTCS Alghero, which is crazy to think then he will have done a full Ironman, a 70.3, as well as the short course race in just over a month. He's probably the only guy who can do this, and it'll be fascinating to see how well he goes there. But he's actually not the only guy from this race doing that race as well. The likes of Jonas Schomburg, Pierre Lecour also towing the line. So it's amazing to see how well these guys can traverse right now between short course and middle distance racing. Leo Berger's on that one, who we've seen racing T100, Max Stapley, and it seems like this is something athletes can do these days. But editing Travis here, jumping in again real quick to say a massive thank you to all of you who listened to my call out in the last week's highlights of St. George. So many of you subscribed. I've never had so many subscribers in one video, I think, before. It means more than you think. I'm editing here at 8:30 at night, and I'm still so motivated to do it and get this video out to you today. And it's because of the support like this that really helps me. If you would like to jump in and subscribe as well, or become a member for as little as $1 a month, it seriously helps me do this going forward and continue working on other projects like fantasy and bringing that back to the sport. So thank you so much again, and let's get started with the women's race. And we had Marta Sanchez leading the lineup here. Somebody who could take the top spot of the Pro Series with a good result, as well as Lisa Perter coming off her incredible Ironman Texas T100 Singapore race. She's in such form. But the big question was, could she handle it as well as Christian? Would that Ironman still be in her legs? We also had Lizzie Rayner, who's also in some good form after a third place at 70.3 Valencia. We also had Lana Meisner, a young gal, short course athlete, jumping up successfully to the middle distance as of late. Rapid swimmer, and she would really push the pace on the swim here, although not able to get away like she was in Valencia, where she had such a fast swim there. It ended up being eventually 6 women out the water together, led by Lena, and for the most part that group would stick together for the remainder of the bike. Lisa Perter, Marta Sanchez, Lena Meisner, Lizzie Rayner rode the entire ride together, and they seemed to work really well. They seemed to be communicating and taking turns at the front of the race. However, despite that, they could not stop Marshall and Pierre from coming after them and eventually catching up to them and overtaking them. She's actually from Reunion Island out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, but she spent a lot of her life around this area, so it definitely was a hometown race for her. She knows these roads super well, and we saw what she did in Nice, so it was no surprise to see her doing super well, riding incredibly strong on her new Canyon. Last year she was on a Cervelo, and it looks like she's really dialed in her position as well as a new helmet. So yeah, she ended up putting 3 minutes into all of those girls, despite the fact that they rode a pack. And even when she caught up to them, they weren't able to stick on her wheel and stay with her. Just too strong on the climbs and descents like we saw in Nice. Other good riders in the field included Sarah Spanks and Nikki Bartlett. Nikki Bartlett coming out of the water a few minutes back, which really ended up costing her a chance at fighting for the podium here. Although she did have the fastest run of the day in the end, which landed her in 5th place. But a really interesting part as well on the bike for the women was this interaction between Sarah Spanks and what ended up being a new pro who admitted to making this mistake of slotting in. And if you haven't seen this rule before, it is when you overtake an athlete, there's another athlete in front of them within 12 meters, and you slot in between those athletes. So it looked like what happened was Sarah Spanks was passed, she was dropping back from the athlete in front of her, and then this athlete overtakes her and jumps in between them, which you're not allowed to do. You have to pass all the athletes if they're within 12 meters of each other. So yeah, Sarah Spanks got a little bit upset, let her know about it, and made sure she got out of there and made the next pass right away. But it was interesting to see a contrast of that with Casper Storns as he pulled in ahead of Christian Blumenfeld, making Christian slow up quite a bit. But he was able to do that because he was further than 12 meters back from Jonas Schomburg, so he was able to slot in there totally legally. but definitely a rule that can cause some serious arguments, and it makes the racing quite tough, especially when there's two athletes overtaking each other. Situations like that can make it pretty confusing. But Marjolaine Pierre came off the bike, like I said, outriding the other athletes by 3 minutes, breaking the bike course record, having a quick transition then as well to give herself even more breathing room on the run. She looked at her best with putting her hair down as she loves to, and ended up running a 1:18:51 split. So someone who's dealt with a lot of injuries in the last couple of years. Great to see her back running super well ahead of her big test coming up at Ironman Hamburg. If you haven't seen the start list for that one, it's going to be fantastic. She'll be taking on Kat Matthews and Laura Philipp once more, like in Nice. But yeah, with that gap she had coming off the bike and the pace that she set on the run, I didn't leave much hope for those behind her.
Finish line, like, it's so beautiful, so I'm super happy to have a nice picture.
But Lizzie Rayner was having the race of her life. Her best performance, she said. Ended up running sub 120 herself, which was just enough to edge out Lena Meissner by just under a minute, who was really suffering. She said she died 1,000 deaths out there, but managed to hang on just to Marta Sanchez, who had a 121 run, which was enough to take her to the top of the Pro Series standings. Impressive start to the year from her so far, with Ironman South Africa, Singapore, and now this one. But Marta looked fairly fresh in comparison to Lena at the finish line, and you just have to wonder, man, if she looked like Lena at the finish line, would she have been able to catch up that extra 45 seconds that she had on her and make the podium? But that's what it means for the Pro Series standings for the men and the women. Marta Sanchez going to the top, like I said, for the women. And then Christian Blumenfeld taking the top spot for the men's race. Leon Chevalier ended up running pretty well here, but he still finished 6 minutes back of Christian. Gustav Eden, though, finishing even further back, I believe in 23rd position at this race. Way further back than Leon, only getting 1,900 points here. So not a great result at Texas, not a great result here either. His swim really did cost him. But he won't be racing the short course race in Alghero, so he'll have some time to make up and prepare for the Ironman Frankfurt race they've got on their calendar next. But next up in the Pro Series is the women's only race at Ironman Hamburg. You cannot miss that one. It is going to be insane on June 1st. Then we've got 70.3 Eagle Man, another North American race, which should feature a lot of the big names. So do stay tuned for those. I've got my wedding coming up next month, so I can't promise I'll get to every race, but I'll do my best. But we've definitely got a news video coming out this week, so do jump in for that one. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.